Hi, so our group decided to look at Little House on the Prairie, which was a 1970s television program based on the books by Laura Ingalls Wilder, which were themselves based on her childhood on the Midwestern frontier. And it's about a father, mother, and three daughters living in a small town. And yeah, it storyline follows their simple farm upbringing and Laura's early life. It's a drama. It touches on themes like alcoholism, poverty, prejudice, and so it touches on some serious stuff. And yep.
Yeah, the TV show is set in the 1870s. It's kind of a Western drama, so a lot of the common myths that you would think would be in a 1970s TV show of like individualism and happiness is probably not going to be seen in this one.
So each of us chose to really focus on an episode to find values of the 70s, and the episode I dug into was season 1, episode 8, episode 5, the love of Johnny Johnson. In this episode, we can see how gender roles are displayed in 70s culture. This episode is about the sisters Laura and Mary both falling in love Laura falls in love for the new student, Johnny. Laura's Mary's younger sister, and Johnny only has eyes for Mary. This invokes conflict between the sisters, and we see Laura struggle to figure out how she can display her love for Johnny as Johnny doesn't look at her in any loving way.
Yeah, and I guess on the note of gender roles, the nuclear family with the father at the center is the main society in this show. The girls go to school, they have friends, but I don't think any of those friendships are really as intimate as what they can confide in with their parents. In the episode I saw, episode 3, Country Girls, they're faced with the snobbery of these wealthier girls in town, and they go to their parents, and dad gives them some really folksy moral lessons: no fighting, no name calling, no teasing, and helps them uphold their pride against the richer family.
In my episode, I watched episode 8 called Ma's Holiday. This is an episode where Pa takes Ma on a week-long anniversary vacation without the children. The children are left in charge of a man, their neighbor, and while they're away, Ma is constantly worrying about her children, but Pa always excuses it, and he seems like he doesn't really care as much as Ma does. It shows like the social roles of a mother always taking care of their children and the father doing other stuff to provide for their family.
Yeah, and in the episode I watched, which was season 1, episode 14, The Lord is My Shepherd, it delved a little bit into the social roles, and it covers the family and the birth of their new son. And Laura basically she refuses to pray for her new baby brother, and the family's pretty upset about it. But her brother grows sick and eventually passes away. So you kind of see a little bit more of religious themes in this episode, but the common theme of the 1870s societal structure is still present.
As we look into the myths that these episodes together and collectively the show portrays about 70s culture, we can see how from a loving and gender role perspective, from my episode, we can see how it was valued that women were proper or more matured, which is why Johnny specifically held eyes for Mary, the older sister, and refrained from getting involved with Laura, who was too young or too small or childish. And that can be seen as a struggle between women and as representing women in society, for that they're still upheld to what men want them to be in order for them to work in society together.
Yeah, and you could see somebody you could see a viewer in the 1970s in a world of, women who are not dressing and acting like the Wilders, of men, women, minorities, all kind of breaking the rules of the previous decades. You could see that viewer looking at the Wilders and thinking, I want something like that. Let's go back. And you could see that kind of feeding into the Reagan Revolution of the 1980s.
You can see that in my episode too, since this show was set in the 1870s. A lot of the social rules were the same as they were in the 1950s. So there's just a bunch of it makes sense for viewers to want to experience the nostalgia of the 1950s and be reminded of what family really is and what it looks like.
Yeah, and the same thing was seen in my episode, which I think is a common theme through the season. There's a lot of the romanticization of the old days, so to speak. A lot of families look to the past, thinking it was a better way to live life, basically with the classic family structure. Family members who believed in God, which was a big theme in my episode, where Laura basically loses faith in religion because she's afraid of losing her father's affection. So but something that you kind of do notice is that she basically comes back to religion once her brother passes away, because she thinks that it's going to be the solution for her. So you can kind of see the thought process back then, how they believed that even despite all the liberation that was going on during the 1970s, there was this other side of the culture where a lot of people were looking to the past. And I think Robert also talked about it, but it did feed into the Reagan Revolution of the 1980s.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.